A billionaire's mute daughter was at the playground when a pregnant homeless woman approached. What she said made the girl speak for the first time. The living room clock read 7 in the morning when Rowan came down the marble staircase. His footsteps echoed through the empty hall, a sharp sound that got lost in the silence of the mansion. It was always like this. Silence. Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, stirring the cereal in her milk without eating. Bright, messy blonde hair fell over her small face, hiding her big, innocent, light blue eyes. 5 years old and not a single word. Not a good morning, not a daddy, nothing. "Hi, princess." Rowan kissed the top of her head. Emily looked up for a second, then went back to playing with her food. He poured black coffee into his cup and checked his phone. 17 new emails. The company needed him early today. It always did. "The nanny will be here at 8, he said, more to himself than to Emily. "You'll be okay, right?" Emily didn't answer. She never answered. Rowan finished his coffee in 3 gulps and picked up his briefcase. At the door, he looked back. Emily was still there, quietly stirring the cereal that was already turning to mush, a little blonde doll lost in a kitchen that was far too big. At 6 in the evening, Rowan came home. The nanny was putting away the toys in the living room. "How was she today, Mrs. Henderson?" "Same as always, Mr. Mitchell. She played a little, ate well, took her nap." The older woman sighed, but she didn't say anything, not a word. Rowan nodded. He knew the answer before he even asked. "Is she in her room?" "Yes, drawing." He walked up the stairs slowly. Emily's room was a rich kid's dream. A canopy bed, shelves full of colorful books, expensive toys scattered across the plush carpet. Everything money could buy. Emily was lying on her stomach on the floor, scribbling on a piece of paper with crayons. Strange drawings, full of dark lines. "Can I see?" She showed him the paper. It was a house. A black house, and with no windows, no door, just a dark square in the middle of a white sheet. "Is that our house?" Emily shrugged and picked up another piece of paper. Rowan sat on the edge of the bed, watching his daughter. Same hair as her mother, same eyes as her mother. But the silence was all her own. Sarah had died in childbirth. Complications no one expected. 1 minute she was there, laughing at his silly jokes between contractions. The next, the doctors were rushing away with newborn Emily, and he never saw Sarah open her eyes again. Since then, Emily hadn't spoken. Rowan remembered last week, when he took Emily to the 5th different doctor. Morrison, the most expensive neurologist in the city. Scans, more scans, hearing tests. 2 hours waiting for results. "Physically, she's perfect," the doctor had said, taking off his glasses. "Excellent hearing, normal motor development. The problem isn't in her body." Then what is it? Sometimes children shut down when they feel something is very wrong in their world. It's a defense mechanism. A defense against what? Rowan had given Emily everything. A beautiful house, good food, expensive clothes, toys other children only dreamed of. What more could a 5-year-old girl want? But deep down, he knew the answer. She wanted the mother she never knew, and she wanted the father who was always working. After Dr. Morrison came the psychologists, 3 sessions a week for 2 months. Emily would go into the room, sit in a small chair and stay silent while the therapist tried to get her to talk. "She needs time, Doctor," Williams had said at the last appointment, "and maybe a change in routine. Something different. Something different." Rowan had thought about it all week. What would be different for a girl who already had everything? The next morning, Rowan woke up later. It was Saturday, but he usually went to the office anyway, not today. He went down to the kitchen and found Emily in the same spot as always, stirring her food without eating. "Good morning, princess." She looked at him, a little surprised. Rowan never had breakfast with her on weekends. He served himself and sat in the chair next to her. Emily just watched as if she didn't understand what was happening. "Emily, do you want to—" Rowan stopped. What did a 5-year-old girl want to do? He had no idea. He looked around the kitchen. It was huge, all white and gleaming, with expensive appliances they barely used. It looked like a showroom, not a place where a family lived. Besides, were they a family? Rowan worked all the time. Emily didn't talk. Mrs. Henderson took care of the girl. It was more like people who lived in the same house. You know what? Rowan put down his cup. I'm tired of all this. Emily looked up. Doctors, therapies, tests. He sighed. Nothing works. Maybe we need to try something else. She tilted her head, curious. Rowan remembered when he was a kid. He lived in a small house with his parents, but on weekends they would go to the city park. Nothing special, just a place with grass, some trees, old swings. But he loved it. How about we go out today? Just you and me. Emily blinked twice. It was the most animated reaction Rowan had seen from her in months. There's a park nearby. Fair simple place with swings. Other kids. He didn't know why he was saying this. They had never been to public parks. We could try something different. Emily dropped her spoon and just stared at him. It won't be like the doctors. No tests, no hard questions. Just us, some fresh air. Rowan smiled. What do you think? For the first time in a long time, Emily smiled back. A small, almost invisible smile. But it was there. Rowan felt a strange tightening in his chest. When was the last time he'd seen Emily smile? Then it settled. After you finish your breakfast, we'll go. Emily picked up her spoon and, for the first time in weeks, ate all of her cereal. Rowan watched, surprised. It was amazing how a simple change of plans could change her mood. Maybe Dr. Morrison was right. Maybe Emily needed something different in her life. And maybe he did too. While Emily went upstairs to change, Rowan stayed in the kitchen thinking, 5 years of trying to give his daughter the best. An expensive house, expensive toys, private schools, private doctors, everything money could buy. But today she had smiled just because he suggested going to the park, a public park, free. Simple. Rowan shook his head. Sometimes the answer was right in front of you, but you were too busy looking for it somewhere else. He put his phone in a drawer. Today, he wasn't going to think about work. Today, he was going to try to be a real father. Emily came running down the stairs, wearing a little blue dress that matched her eyes. She was holding a doll in her hand. Ready? Rowan asked. She nodded yes. They left the silent mansion together. The morning sun was warm. The sky was blue. And for the first time in a long time, Rowan felt that maybe things could get better. He didn't know it yet, but that day was going to change everything. For Emily, and for him too. The park was very different from what Rowan had expected. It wasn't small or run down as he had imagined. It was simple, but there were families scattered on the grass, kids running between the trees, dogs chasing balls. Emily got out of the car slowly, looking at everything with curiosity. She held her doll tightly against her chest, like she always did when she was nervous. Want to go on the swings first? Rowan asked. Emily shook her head no. Instead, she started walking along the gravel path that circled the park. Rowan followed her, in no hurry. It was strange being there. For the last 5 years, the only outings they had together were for doctor's appointments, expensive clinics, quiet waiting rooms, doctors speaking in low voices. This was different. There was laughter, chatter, life. Emily stopped near a large tree and touched the bark with her fingers. Rowan watched her. She seemed fascinated by small things. An ant carrying a crumb, yellow flowers growing on the side of the path, a butterfly that landed on a leaf. When was the last time he had paid attention to those things? They walked for a few more minutes until Emily stopped suddenly. Rowan followed her gaze and saw a woman sitting alone on a wooden bench near a flower bed. The woman was young, maybe 25. She had dark brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and wore a navy blue dress that showed her large belly. She was very pregnant. Her hands were resting on her stomach and she was looking at the small pond in the center of the park. Emily started to approach slowly. "Emily," Rowan called softly, "come here." But she didn't stop. She kept walking toward the woman, as if being pulled by something invisible. Rowan hurried to catch up. Emily stopped about 6 feet from the bench and just stood there watching. The woman noticed and turned her head. When she saw Emily, she smiled in a gentle way. "Hi there, sweetie." Emily didn't respond, but she also didn't run away like she usually did when strangers spoke to her. She just stood there, holding her doll, observing the woman with curiosity. "Sorry," Rowan said, coming closer. "She's a little shy." "That's okay." The woman had a soft, calm voice. A kid can sense when someone isn't a threat. Rowan was about to pull Emily away, but something made him stop. His daughter was closer to the woman now, still at a safe distance, but closer than she usually got to strangers. "You have a baby in your belly?" Rowan asked, trying to make small talk so Emily wouldn't feel pressured. "I do." The woman caressed her stomach. "Had you in a few weeks?" Emily took another step toward her. "She's curious about babies," Rowan explained. "I don't think she's ever seen a pregnant person up close." The woman looked at Emily intently. There was something in her manner that was different. It wasn't the forced smile most adults gave when they saw children. It was genuine, patient. "Do you want to touch?" she asked Emily. "Sometimes he kicks." Emily looked at Rowan, as if asking for permission. He nodded that she could. Slowly, Emily approached and held out her small hand. The woman guided her hand to the side of her belly. "Right here, can you feel that?" Emily stood very still, concentrating. Suddenly, her eyes widened. "Time he moved," the woman said, chuckling softly. "I think he likes you." Rowan watched the scene, surprised. Emily was completely absorbed, her hand still on the woman's belly. She looked fascinated. "What's your name?" the woman asked. Emily, of course, didn't answer. "She doesn't talk," Rowan explained. Not yet, at least." The woman nodded, as if that were perfectly normal. "I'm Grace," she said, speaking directly to Emily. "And this one here," she pointed to her belly, "doesn't have a name yet. Do you have any suggestions?" Emily removed her hand from the belly and seemed to think. Rowan expected her to walk away, as she always did after a few minutes of interacting with new people. But she stayed. Grace didn't try to force conversation. She didn't ask why Emily didn't talk, didn't suggest treatments, didn't offer advice. She simply sat there peacefully, as if having a silent 5-year-old girl beside her was the most natural thing in the world. After a few minutes, Grace sighed deeply and placed a hand on her chest. "Sometimes it hurts here," she said, more to herself than to them. "A different kind of pain. It's not from the body." Emily looked at her, interested. "There's a kind of pain that rises and gets stuck in your throat. I know." The words came out softly, without drama. Grace wasn't trying to get attention or sound profound. It was just a simple, honest observation. Emily stood very still. Then, slowly, she brought her own small hand to her chest, right in the middle, over her heart, and then it happened. "Here." The word came out quietly, almost a whisper, but it came out. Rowan froze. He had to force himself not to move, not to ruin the moment. Emily had spoken. After 5 years of complete silence, she had said a word. "Here," Emily repeated, her hand still on her chest. Grace smiled and nodded. "Exactly. Here." Emily looked at Grace for a few more seconds, as if processing something important. Then she turned and walked back to Rowan. "It was very nice meeting you," Grace said to Emily. "And you too," she added, looking at Rowan. "Thank you," Rowan managed to say. "I don't know what." "She's never—" "You don't have to explain." Grace stood up slowly from the bench. "Sometimes you just need someone who understands without trying to fix you." Rowan wanted to say more, wanted to ask for her full name, where she lived, how he could thank her. But when he turned to speak, Grace was already walking toward the park exit. "Wait," Rowan called out, but she didn't stop. She kept walking, a small figure in a blue dress disappearing among the trees. Rowan looked down at Emily. She was watching Grace leave, with an expression he had never seen before. She looked relieved, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Emily," he said, crouching down to her level, "you spoke." She looked at him and nodded. "Yes." "That was the first time." Another nod. Rowan felt his eyes well up. 5 years of waiting for a single word. 5 years of doctors, therapies, expensive treatments. And Emily had spoken to a stranger in the park, a woman they would never see again. "What did you feel when you spoke to her?" Emily thought for a moment. Then she pointed to her chest again. "Here?" She nodded yes. Rowan didn't fully understand what had happened, but he knew it was important. That woman, Grace, had done something no doctor could. She had made Emily feel understood. They stayed at the park for another hour. Emily played on the swings, ran on the grass, even laughed when a dog came over for a pet. But she didn't speak again. Even so, something had changed. Rowan could see it in the way she moved, in the way she looked at things. It was as if a long locked door had been opened, just a crack, but enough to let a little light in. On the way home, Rowan thought about Grace. Who was she? Why was she alone in the park? And how had she managed to make Emily speak with just a few words? There's a kind of pain that rises and gets stuck in your throat. Rowan understood. He felt that too sometimes. The pain of losing Sarah, the pain of not being able to help Emily, the pain of feeling lost as a father. It all got stuck there, in his throat, with no way out. Maybe Emily felt the same thing. Maybe she had her own pain trapped inside, and Grace had been the first person to acknowledge it without trying to fix it. Rowan glanced at Emily in the rearview mirror. She was quiet, looking out the window, but there was something different in her face, a peace he hadn't seen in a very long time. One word. Emily had said one word. It was a start. The next morning, Rowan woke up early. He had slept poorly, thinking about what had happened at the park. Emily speaking for the first time, the mysterious woman who had disappeared without a trace. He went down to the kitchen and found Emily already awake, sitting at the table with paper and crayons spread around her. She was drawing, "Good morning, Princess." "You're up early today." Emily looked at him and nodded. She went back to her drawing, concentrating. Rowan went closer to see what she was doing. It wasn't a black house like always. It was something different. On the paper was a green tree, a brown bench, and 2 figures. One small and blonde, clearly Emily. The other was larger, with dark hair and a round belly. "Is that the woman from yesterday?" Rowan asked. Emily stopped drawing and looked up at him. She nodded yes. "Grace." The word came out clearly, without hesitation. Emily remembered her name. Rowan felt a pang in his chest. It was the second word Emily had said, and both were related to that stranger in the park. Emily picked up a pink crayon and started drawing something small inside the figure's belly. A tiny baby. "You liked her, didn't you?" Another nod. Emily finished the drawing and stared at it for a moment. Then she got up, took the paper, and walked to the kitchen door. She pointed outside. "You want to go out?" Rowan asked. Emily nodded yes and pointed to the drawing. Then she pointed to the door again. Rowan understood. She wanted to go back to the park. She wanted to find Grace. "I don't know if she'll be there again, Emily." Emily insisted, pointing to the door one more time. Her blue eyes were determined. Rowan sighed. How could he say no to the first thing Emily had asked for in 5 years? "Okay, let's have breakfast and then we'll go." An hour later, they were in the car on their way to the park. Rowan had packed a basket with sandwiches, fruit, and juice. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was an excuse to stay longer if they found Grace. Emily was in the back seat, holding her drawing and looking out the window. She seemed anxious, but in a good way. The park was more crowded than the day before. It was Sunday, and entire families were enjoying the morning sun. Rowan parked, and Emily ran out toward the bench where they had found Grace. The bench was empty. Emily stopped in front of it, looking around. Rowan walked up to her. She might not come today, Princess. We don't know where she lives or... Emily wasn't listening. She was walking through the park, searching. She checked near the pond, near the swings, near the bigger trees. Rowan followed her, feeling a bit silly. They were looking for a stranger they had met once by chance. The odds of seeing her again were minimal, but Emily didn't give up. She kept searching for over half an hour. Just as Rowan was about to suggest they leave, Emily stopped suddenly. She was looking toward a more secluded area of the park, where there were some picnic tables under large trees. Grace was there. Sitting alone at a table, looking down at her own hands, Emily took off running. "Emily, slow down!" Rowan ran after her, carrying the basket. Grace looked up when she heard footsteps approaching. When she saw Emily, her face lit up. "Hi, sweetie. You came back." Emily stopped in front of the table, out of breath, and held out the drawing to Grace. "For me." Grace took the paper carefully. "Wow, this is beautiful." "Is this me?" Emily nodded yes. "And is this the baby?" Grace pointed to the pink drawing inside the figure's belly. Another nod. Rowan arrived, a little breathless. "She woke up drawing this today. I think she wanted to show it to you." Grace looked at the drawing intently, as if it were the most important thing in the world. "It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever received. Thank you, Emily." Emily smiled, a big, genuine smile. Rowan almost stumbled. It had been so long since he'd last seen Emily smile like that. "Grace," Emily said, quietly but clearly. "That's right, Grace." She folded the drawing carefully and put it in the small bag she was carrying. "I'll keep this forever." Rowan placed the basket on the table. "We brought some things to eat. I thought, well, if we ran into each other again..." Grace looked at the basket, then at Rowan. "You don't have to..." "Of course we don't, but Emily would like it if you stayed with us for a little while." Grace hesitated. She looked tired, thinner than Rowan remembered. She was wearing the same clothes as the day before. "Okay," she said finally. "Thank you." Rowan opened the basket and spread the sandwiches and fruit on the table. Grace took half a sandwich slowly, as if not wanting to seem too hungry, but Rowan noticed she ate it quickly. Emily sat next to Grace and looked at her belly. "Is he still moving around?" Grace asked. Emily nodded yes, curious. "Want to feel again?" Emily held out her small hand, and Grace guided it to the side of her belly. After a few seconds, Emily smiled. "He likes you," Grace said. "He gets calmer when you touch him." Rowan watched the interaction, impressed. Emily was completely at ease with Grace. She didn't have the tension she always showed with other people. "Can I ask?" Rowan started, then stopped. He didn't want to be nosy. "You can ask," Grace said, eating another piece of sandwich. "Do you live nearby?" Grace was quiet for a moment. "At the moment I live in the park." "What do you mean?" "I sleep here. There are some more hidden benches near the restrooms. The security guards don't bother you much." Rowan felt his stomach clench. She was homeless, pregnant and homeless. "For how long?" "About 2 months." Grace drank some juice. "I lost my job when my belly started to show. The owner of the room I was renting wouldn't wait for the rent anymore." Emily stopped playing and listened. "And the baby's father?" Grace gave a bitter laugh. "Disappeared when I told him about the pregnancy. Said he wasn't ready to be a father." She caressed her belly. "I guess being a single mom isn't something you prepare for either. But life doesn't ask if you're ready." Rowan was silent. He thought about his own situation. He had money, a house, everything he needed. But he had also become a father without being prepared, especially after Sarah died. "Do you have family, anyone who can help?" "My parents died when I was a teenager. I was raised by an aunt, but we had a falling out a few years ago." Grace shrugged. "It's just me and him now." Emily moved closer to Grace and placed her small hand on hers. "Grace," she said again, louder this time. "Hi, sweetie." Grace sad. The words came out slowly, but they came out. Emily was trying to ask a question. Grace looked into the little girl's blue eyes. "Sometimes, but you make me happy." Emily smiled and leaned her head on Grace's arm. Rowan watched, his heart aching. His daughter was showing affection for someone she had known for 2 days, and that person was living on the street. They stayed at the park for another hour. Grace told stories about the baby, about how he kicked when she ate sweets, how he got quiet when she sang. Emily listened to everything, fascinated. When the sun started to get stronger, Rowan suggested they leave. "Grace, you..." He stopped, thinking of the best way to say it. "Where are you going for lunch today?" "There's a church that serves meals on Sundays." "I'll head over there in a bit." Emily looked at Rowan with a worried expression. Rowan made a decision. "Grace, can I make you a proposal?" She looked at him, cautious. "You touched my daughter's heart. In 2 days, you did something that doctors couldn't do in 5 years." Rowan chose his words carefully. "I want to help you. With respect. You don't have to..." "Let me finish." Rowan leaned forward. "Emily needs someone like you, someone who truly understands her. And you need a place to stay, especially now, with the baby coming." Grace was silent. "I'm offering you a job, to take care of Emily. A room in our house, a proper salary. This isn't charity, Grace. It's a job, Rowan. The house is big. You'd have your own room, your own space. And when the baby is born, he would be welcome too." Emily looked from one to the other, sensing that something important was happening. "You barely know me," Grace said. "I know my daughter trusts you. That's more than any reference or resume can tell me." Grace looked at Emily, who was holding her hand. "I don't want you to think it's out of pity. It's not pity, it's necessity," Rowan smiled. "Emily needs you as much as you need a safe place to have this baby." Grace was quiet for a long time. Emily waited patiently. "Would it be temporary?" Grace finally asked. "It would be for as long as you want to stay. If it works out, and I think it will, it can be permanent. If it doesn't, you can leave whenever you want. No hard feelings." Grace looked around the park, then at the small bag that held all her possessions. "I don't really know how to take care of children. Emily isn't a normal child. She needs someone who understands her, not someone with a degree in child development." Emily tugged on Grace's sleeve. "Grace home," she said, putting 2 words together for the first time. Grace looked at the girl, surprised. "You want me to go to your house?" "Grace home," Emily repeated, nodding. Grace took a deep breath. "Okay," she said softly. "I accept." Rowan felt a huge sense of relief. "Really? Really? But on one condition." "What is it?" "If at any point you think it's not working out, or if Emily doesn't feel comfortable with me, I'll leave with no problem. No drama, no arguments. Deal." Emily smiled and hugged Grace. "Thank you," Grace whispered in Emily's ear. "You saved me." Rowan watched the 2 of them embrace. He had made an impulsive decision, offering a home and a job to a stranger. But seeing Emily so happy, he knew he had done the right thing. For the first time in 5 years, his house was going to have real life in it. They gathered Grace's things, which fit into one small bag, and went home. Emily held Grace's hand the whole way, as if afraid she might disappear again. Rowan drove slowly, watching the 2 of them in the rear-view mirror. Emily was talking quietly to Grace, pointing things out the window. His daughter was talking. She was finally talking. And it had all started with a strange woman on a park bench who knew exactly the right thing to say at the right time. Sometimes life surprises you. Sometimes the right people show up when you least expect them. And sometimes helping someone is the same as saving yourself. The mansion's gate opened, and Rowan drove slowly up the circular driveway. Grace sat quietly in the back seat, looking out the window. The house was enormous, with manicured gardens and a fountain in the center of the entrance. "This is where you live?" she asked softly. Emily nodded, yes, excitedly. She couldn't wait to show Grace everything. Rowan parked and got out to open the car door. Emily jumped out and ran to Grace, taking her hand. "Come," Emily said, pulling Grace toward the house. It was the first time Rowan had heard Emily give an order, a simple command. She was taking initiative. They entered through the main hall. Grace looked around, impressed. The ceiling was high, with a crystal chandelier in the center. The marble staircase curved elegantly up to the second floor. It's very beautiful," Grace said. Emily didn't waste time on formalities. She pulled Grace by the hand, leading her on a tour of the house. "Kitchen," Emily said, pointing to the right. Rowan followed the two of them, watching. Emily was talking more in one afternoon than she had in 5 entire years. In the kitchen, Emily opened the refrigerator. "Water," she said, taking a bottle and offering it to Grace. "Thank you, sweetie." Emily showed her the cabinets, the table where she ate breakfast, the window that looked out to the backyard. For each thing, she said a word. Table, window, yard. Grace paid attention to everything, asking simple questions that Emily answered with gestures or single words. "Where do you play?" Grace asked. Emily lit up. She pulled Grace by the hand again, leading her to the living room. In the corner was a rugged area with a few boxes of toys. "Doll," Emily said, picking up a blonde-haired doll. She held the doll out to Grace, who took it gently. "She's very pretty. What's her name?" Emily thought for a moment, then she pointed at Grace. "As Grace?" Grace smiled. "You want your doll to be named Grace?" Emily nodded yes. Rowan watched from the other side of the room. It was surreal to see Emily interacting like this. She was excited, talkative, almost normal. Emily took more toys out of the box, colorful blocks, stuffed animals, puzzles. For Grace, she explained each one with simple words. Bear. Puzzle, how block. Grace sat on the rug and Emily sat next to her. They started building a tower with the colorful blocks. Blue, Emily said, placing a blue block on top. What a pretty color, just like your eyes. Emily smiled and picked up another block. Green. Rowan approached slowly. He wanted to join in, but he didn't know how. He had never played on the floor with Emily. He always thought she preferred to play alone. "Can I help?" he asked. Emily looked at him, then at Grace. Grace nodded. "Come on, Daddy," Emily said. Daddy. The word Rowan had wanted to hear more than any other in his life. Emily had said it without hesitation, naturally. He sat on the rug on the other side of the block tower. Emily handed him a red block. Red, she said, pointing to the block. Rowan placed the block on the tower carefully. It felt strange to be there on the floor, playing. When was the last time he had done this, or rather, had he ever done this? The tower grew tall and started to wobble. Emily laughed when it fell, scattering blocks across the rug. Again, she said, already gathering the blocks. They built another tower, this time shorter and more stable. Emily clapped her hands when it was finished. Pretty, she said. Very pretty, Grace agreed. You're very smart, Emily. Emily looked proud. She picked up a simple puzzle with large pieces, featuring a drawing of animals. Puzzle, she said to Grace. They started putting it together. Emily knew all the pieces, knew exactly where each one went. When Grace tried to put a piece in the wrong spot, Emily shook her head. No, here, she would say, showing the right place. Rowan watched, impressed. Emily was being patient, teaching Grace how to do the puzzle. She was behaving like a little teacher. Cat, Emily said, placing the piece of an orange cat. Dog, she continued, fitting in a little brown dog. You know a lot of animals, Grace said. Emily nodded yes and pointed upwards. Books, she said. So you have books in your room? Come, Emily said, getting up. She took Grace's hand and Rowan's hand, one in each, and led them up the stairs. Emily's room was truly impressive. A pink and white canopy bed, shelves full of books, a small table with little chairs where she drew. Emily let go of their hands and ran to the bookshelf. Books, she said, grabbing one with drawings of animals. She sat on the bed and patted the mattress beside her, calling for Grace to sit. Grace sat down, and Emily opened the book in her lap. Lion, Emily said, pointing to the picture. Elephant. Zebra. She knew every animal in the book. She turned the pages slowly, naming each one. Rowan sat on the edge of the bed, watching. Emily was completely at ease, talking non-stop. Where was the silent little girl he knew? Emily, he said, did you always know these words? She looked at him and nodded, yes. But you never talked to me. Emily was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she pointed to Grace. Grace listens, she said simply. The sentence hit Rowan like a punch. Grace listens. Did that mean he didn't? He thought about the rushed mornings, the silent dinners while he checked emails, the times Emily tried to show him drawings, and he only glanced quickly before getting back to work. Maybe Emily was right. Maybe he didn't really listen. Emily closed the book and went to her little drawing table. She grabbed some papers and came back to the bed. Drawings, she said, showing them to Grace. Grace looked at each drawing carefully. They weren't just black houses like Rowan always saw. There were flowers, suns, trees, animals, colorful, happy drawings. When did you make these? Rowan asked. Always, Emily replied. Always. She had always made beautiful drawings, but Rowan only paid attention to the dark ones, the ones that worried him. Emily grabbed more papers from the table. There were drawings of people too. A little blonde girl who was clearly her, and a tall woman with long hair. Mommy, Emily said, pointing to the woman in the drawing. Rowan felt his heart clench. Did Emily remember her mother? But she was just a baby when Sarah died. You remember Mommy? He asked. Emily shook her head no. Photo, she said, pointing to the dresser. Rowan looked. There was a photo of Sarah on Emily's dresser, a photo he had put there years ago and then forgotten about. Emily had spent 5 years looking at that photo, drawing the mother she never really knew. Mommy pretty, Emily said. Very pretty, Rowan agreed, his voice thick. Emily picked up another drawing. It was more recent. Rowan could tell by the newer paper. It showed 3 people, a little blonde girl, a tall man, and a pregnant woman. Family, Emily said, showing the drawing to Grace. Grace looked at the drawing lovingly. Are we a family now? Emily nodded. Yes, smiling. Rowan looked at the drawing. He was there, in the family Emily had imagined, but for the first time, he wasn't alone with her. Grace was there too. Emily put the drawings away and went to a box in the corner of the room. Light, she said, picking up a small flashlight. She turned off the room light and switched on the flashlight, making shadows on the wall. Bunny, she said, making a bunny shape with her hands in front of the light. Dog, bird. Grace tried to do it too, and Emily laughed when the shadows came out crooked. I like this, Emily said, adjusting Grace's fingers to make the right shadow. Rowan tried to make a shadow too, but his hands were too big. Emily laughed. Silly Daddy, she said, and the 3 of them laughed together. It was the first time Rowan had heard Emily make a joke, the first time the 3 of them had laughed together. They played until it got dark. Emily showed them all her toys, all her books, all her drawings. She talked more that afternoon than she had in her entire life, and Rowan realized something that hurt his chest. He had never played with Emily like that. He had never sat on the floor, built towers, made shadows on the wall. He always thought being present meant being in the same house, but being truly present was what Grace was doing, sitting on the floor, listening to every word, paying attention to every detail. When Emily finally started to yawn, Grace suggested it was time for bed. Bath, Emily said. Do you want me to help you? Grace asked. Emily nodded yes and took Grace's hand. Rowan stood in the room, looking at the toys scattered on the floor. In just a few hours, that silent room had transformed into a place full of life, and Emily had transformed into a normal, talkative, happy little girl, all because someone had sat on the floor and decided to really play with her. Rowan bent down and started to pick up the toys. For the first time in 5 years, he was going to learn how to be a real father. and Emily was going to have the childhood she always deserved. The next morning, Rowan woke up to sounds he had never heard in the house before. Laughter, conversation, life. He came downstairs and found Emily and Grace in the living room, sitting on the rug, building a giant tower with all the blocks Emily owned. "Good morning," Rowan said. "Daddy!" Emily shouted, running to hug him. Rowan was still surprised every time Emily spoke. 5 years of silence couldn't be erased from memory overnight. "Good morning, Princess. You too are up early." "Grace woke up first," Emily said. "Baby kicked a lot." Rowan looked at Grace and who smiled, looking a bit tired. "He's more active in the morning. I think he wants to be born soon." Emily ran back to the block tower. "Come play, Daddy." Rowan looked at the clock. It was still early. Normally, he'd be getting ready for work, checking emails, thinking about his schedule for the day. His assistant had already sent 3 messages about meetings. "I need to—" "Come on," Emily insisted, pulling his hand. Grace looked at Rowan with an encouraging smile. "She wants to show you the tower. We worked really hard on it." Rowan hesitated. He had calls to make, emails to answer. The quarterly report needed to be reviewed, but Emily was looking at him with those blue eyes full of expectation. "Okay, but just for a little bit." He sat on the rug, crossing his legs like Emily. The tower was truly impressive, with colorful blocks forming a tall, stable structure. There must have been at least 50 blocks. "Did you do this by yourself?" Rowan asked. Grace helped, but I was the boss. Emily was proud. She took more blocks and started building a second tower next to the first one. "Bridge," she said, placing blocks horizontally to connect the 2 towers. Rowan watched, amazed. Emily had an architectural logic he had never noticed. Each block was carefully chosen for its color and size. "Very clever, Emily." She smiled and continued building. Grace helped her, holding blocks while Emily decided where to place each one. "Rowan," Grace said softly, "why don't you stay a little longer? Emily is so happy." Rowan looked at his daughter, focused on her construction. When was the last time he had seen Emily so engrossed in something other than drawing? And when was the last time someone had asked him to stay instead of rushing off to work? "I guess I can," he said, picking up a few blocks. "Where can I help?" Emily clapped her hands. "Tower 3, she said, pointing to an empty space on the rug. They spent the entire morning building. Rowan cancelled his morning meetings and told his assistant he would only take urgent calls. For the first time in years, work could wait. When they finished, they had built an entire city of blocks, towers, bridges, walls, even a small house. It looked like a fantasy kingdom. "It's our city," Emily said. "What's it called?" Grace asked. Emily thought for a moment, looking at the whole construction. "Happy City," Rowan laughed. "Happy City. A perfect name for a place the 3 of them had built together. Emily took some small figurines and placed them in the city. "This is Emily," she said, placing a little blonde doll in one of the towers. "This is Daddy," she continued, taking a male figurine and placing it carefully next to the doll. "And this is Grace," she finished, placing a female doll next to the other 2. The 3 figurines stood together in the tallest tower, looking out over the entire city they had created. "Family," Emily said, satisfied. Rowan felt a tightness in his chest. In Emily's world, they were already a family. Just like that, after lunch, Grace suggested a new game. "How about we make a fort?" Emily was thrilled. "A fort! A fort! Like in the book!" Grace got some sheets from the closet, and Emily brought chairs from the kitchen. Rowan watched as they draped sheets between the chairs and the sofa. "Come help, Daddy," Emily said. Rowan came closer, a bit awkwardly. He had never built a fort in his life. He held one end of the sheet while Grace secured the other to a chair. "Like this," Grace said, showing him how to tie the knot. "It has to be tight, or it will fall." When they finished, they had a perfect fort in the living room. Spacious enough for all 3. with sheet walls that filtered the light in a cozy way. Emily ran inside, beaming. "It's our house!" she yelled from inside the fort. "Can I come in?" Rowan asked. "You can! It's your house too!" Rowan ducked down and crawled into the fort. It was cramped but cozy. Emily was sitting in the middle, hugging her doll, her eyes shining with joy. Grace came in too, with a little difficulty because of her belly. "It's perfect," she said, getting comfortable. Emily grabbed a few books and pretended to read to them. "Once upon a time, there was a girl who lived in a fort," she began, making up the story as she looked at the pictures. Rowan was surprised. Emily was telling a story, with a beginning, middle, and end, and she was looking at him as she told it, including him in the narrative. "And she was very happy because she had a family that liked to play," Emily finished. "I liked the story," Rowan said. "It's about us," Emily explained, as if it were obvious. Of course it was. Everything was about them now. They stayed in the fort for over an hour, telling stories, playing pretend, laughing for no reason. Rowan couldn't remember the last time he had laughed so much, or when he had spent so much time with Emily without thinking about work. The next day, Grace taught them a game of imitating voices. "I'm going to talk like a robot," she said, using a mechanical voice. "Hello, Emily, how are you?" Emily laughed and tried to imitate her. "Hello, Grace, I am fine." Her voice came out all choppy and robotic, and all three of them laughed. Then Grace imitated a mouse voice, all high-pitched. Emily tried too, and Rowan laughed at the squeaky result. "Your turn, Daddy," Emily said. Rowan felt awkward. He didn't know how to imitate voices. He'd always been too serious for things like this. "I don't know how—" "Try," Grace encouraged. "It doesn't have to be perfect." Rowan cleared his throat and tried to do a robot voice, just like Grace had done. "Hello, Princess, how was your day?" Emily burst out laughing. "Daddy Robot." Rowan tried other voices, loosening up a little at a time. A deep giant voice and a tiny bird voice, a funny duck voice. Emily laughed at every attempt, and the more she laughed, the more Rowan let go. It was liberating to act silly and see his daughter so happy. Soon all three of them were talking in crazy voices, inventing characters, making silly jokes. Emily imitated his voice, trying to sound important on the phone. Rowan was surprised by the perfect impersonation. "Is that how I sound at work?" "Exactly," Emily said, laughing. "Very serious." Rowan had never realized how serious and distant he sounded when he talked about work. Through Emily's eyes, he saw himself in a different way. In the afternoon, Grace suggested they dance. "Dance?" Rowan asked. "It's fun," Emily said. "Grace taught me." Grace put on some music on the kitchen radio, a happy, upbeat song with a strong beat. Emily started to dance, spinning and jumping. Her blonde hair flew around her face. Grace danced too, slowly because of her belly, but smiling. "Come on, Daddy." Rowan stood still, feeling awkward. "Executives don't dance in their kitchens at home. I don't know how to dance." "Nobody really knows," Grace said. "You just move and have fun." Emily took his hands and pulled him into the middle of the kitchen. "Like this," she said, moving her arms up and down. Rowan tried to imitate her, feeling ridiculous at first, but Emily was so happy, so excited, that he gradually let go. Soon he was spinning Emily through the air, making her laugh until she was breathless. "More, Daddy, more!" They danced for 3 songs in a row. Rowan sweated, laughed, and felt lighter than he had in years. It was as if he had taken off an invisible suit he'd been wearing for 5 years. When the music stopped, Emily hugged him tight. "Daddy dances well." Rowan doubted it, but it didn't matter. Emily had enjoyed it, and that's what counted. A week later, on a quiet afternoon, Grace suggested they play kitchen. "Let's make a restaurant," she said. Emily was thrilled. She got all the toy utensils out of the box, little pans, plates, cups, plastic food. "I'm the chef," Emily announced. "I'm the helper," Grace said. "And me?" Rowan asked. "You're the important customer," Emily said, very seriously. They set up a restaurant on the living room rug. Grace helped Emily organize the ingredients, while Rowan sat in a chair waiting to be served. "What would you like to eat, sir?" Emily asked, very formally, as if she were a real waitress. Rowan played along. What's your special today?" Emily consulted with Grace in dramatic whispers. Then she answered, "Pasta with special house sauce and a salad from Chef Emily." "Perfect. I'll have that." Emily and Grace started cooking. They stirred the little pans, made sizzling noises, and talked about imaginary spices as if it were a cooking show. Rowan watched, impressed by their seriousness. Emily was completely absorbed in the game, as focused as if she were preparing a royal banquet. "Almost ready," Emily announced, stirring something in a small pink pan. "The sauce is perfect," Grace said, being the perfect assistant. A few minutes later, Emily brought a plastic plate with carefully arranged toy food to Rowan. "Fire pasta from Chef Emily," she said proudly, giving a little bow. Rowan picked up a plastic fork and pretended to eat, making sounds of approval. This is delicious, Chef Emily." Emily beamed, radiant. Then she stood still, looking at him in a different way. There was something in her eyes that Rowan had never seen before. Rowan continued to pretend to eat. "Seriously, it's delicious. You're an excellent chef, the best in the city." Emily came closer. Her blue eyes were shining in a way that made Rowan's heart race. She stood right in front of him, looking directly into his eyes, not looking away. And then she said quietly but clearly, "Daddy." Rowan stopped chewing the imaginary food. He stopped moving. He almost stopped breathing. Emily had never said "Daddy" while looking at him. She had always said it to other people, about him, but never to him, directly, with such intensity. "Daddy," Emily repeated, still looking into his eyes. Rowan felt his eyes fill with tears. He put down the plastic fork and just stared at his daughter, lost. "Hi, princess," he managed to say, his voice thick. Emily smiled the most beautiful smile Rowan had ever seen, a full smile that lit up her entire face. "Did Daddy like the food?" "I loved it," Rowan said, laughing and crying at the same time. Emily climbed into his lap and hugged him tight. "Daddy," she said again, louder this time, as if testing the word. Rowan hugged her back, feeling as if 5 years of distance were dissolving in that moment. Grace watched in silence, with her own tears in her eyes. She placed a hand on her belly, as if protecting the baby from the emotion. "Daddy," Emily repeated, shouting now, happy, as if she had discovered a magic word. "I'm here, princess." "I'm here." Rowan rocked Emily in his lap, both of them laughing and crying together. 5 years of waiting, 5 years of distance, 5 years of silence, all being healed in that hug. For the first time in 5 years, Rowan felt like a real father. Not just the man who paid the bills and went to doctor's appointments, but the father his daughter called by name, who played on the floor, who danced in the kitchen, who ate imaginary food and praised the most talented chef in the world. "I love you, Emily," he said. "I love you too, Daddy," she replied, as naturally as if she had always said it. Grace came closer and joined the hug. "Family," Emily said, content. "Family," Rowan and Grace agreed at the same time. There, in the middle of the toy-filled living room, surrounded by little pans and plastic food, the three of them understood they had found something no money could buy. They had found a real home, and Rowan had finally found his daughter, and she had found her father. The sun was setting when Rowan found Grace on the back porch. She was sitting in a rocking chair, watching Emily play on the lawn. The girl was chasing butterflies, laughing loudly, completely free. "Can I sit?" Rowan asked. "Of course." Rowan settled into the chair next to her. They sat in silence for a few minutes, just watching Emily. She had found a stick and was drawing something in the dirt. "I've never seen her like this," Rowan said finally. "Like what?" "So light, so happy." He sighed. For 5 years, she was a serious, quiet little girl, always still. Now look at her. Emily had dropped the stick and was now rolling on the grass, getting her dress dirty, without a care in the world. Now that's how a child should be, Grace said, free to be a kid. Rowan nodded in agreement. You know, Grace, I thought that toys, expensive clothes, comfort would make my daughter happy. Grace looked at him, waiting. I spent fortunes on educational toys, designer clothes, rooms decorated by designers. Rowan laughed, but without humor. So I thought if I gave her everything money could buy, she'd be the happiest kid in the world. And it didn't work. It didn't work. She remained silent, sad, closed off. Rowan watched Emily, who was now gathering small flowers. But all she wanted was someone with her. The words came out with weight. Rowan realized he was admitting something that hurt. To have someone who was really present, he continued. Not just in the same house-bound cars, but truly present, playing, talking, paying attention. Grace rocked slowly in her chair. She just needed to be seen, and now she is. Rowan turned to look at Grace. There was something in the simplicity of that sentence that hit him. To be seen, he repeated. All children need that. They need someone to really see them. Not what they should be, not what's wrong with them, but who they really are. Rowan thought about the 5 years of medical appointments, doctors trying to find out what was wrong with Emily, therapists trying to fix her silence, he himself trying to understand why she wasn't like other kids. No one had ever just stopped to see Emily for who she was. You did that from the first day, Rowan said. In the park, when she approached you, you didn't try to make her talk, you didn't ask questions, you didn't try to fix anything. Because she wasn't broken. Grace caressed her belly where the baby was moving. Emily was just waiting. Waiting for someone who understood that sometimes you need silence to process the world. Waiting for someone who knew that pain is pain, even when you're little. Rowan remembered the words Grace had said in the park. There's a kind of pain that rises and gets stuck in your throat. She felt her mother's absence, he said. And your absence too. The words didn't sound like an accusation. Grace spoke gently, but they were direct. I was there every day. Being physically present isn't the same as being emotionally present. Rowan was quiet. He knew Grace was right. After Sarah died, I didn't know how to be a single father. It was easier to work, make money, solve practical problems. Giving Emily things was easier than connecting with her. Exactly, Rowan sighed. I was afraid I wouldn't be enough. Sarah always knew what to do with kids. I didn't even know how to play properly. Emily had stopped picking flowers and was building something with sticks and pebbles. But now you do, Grace said. So because you taught me. I didn't teach you anything. I just showed you that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. Rowan watched Emily for a long moment. She was humming softly as she played, something she had never done before. You know what's funny, he said. I always thought Emily needed more things. More toys, more activities, more stimulation. But what she needed was less. What do you mean? Less rush, less schedule, less worry about fixing something. Rowan smiled. She needed simple afternoons, silly games, someone to sit on the floor with her. Grace nodded. The best things in life are simple. Rowan looked at Grace, really looked at her. He saw a woman who had lost everything, job, home, relationship, but who could still see beauty in the world, who could give love even when she needed love herself. You changed our lives, he said. You changed mine too. But you saved us. We saved each other. Emily ran toward the porch, holding something in her hands. Look, she shouted, showing a small construction made of sticks, flowers and pebbles. What is it? Rowan asked. Our house, Emily said proudly. Rowan looked closer. It was a simple little house, but well made. Emily had used the flowers as decoration and the pebbles as a path. It's beautiful, Grace said. It's for us to live in. All together. Emily placed the little house on the porch floor carefully. Family, she said, pointing to the construction. Rowan felt something stir in his chest. It wasn't the first time Emily had talked about family, but today the word sounded different. It sounded real. He looked at Emily, covered in dirt, hair messy, smiling from ear to ear. Then he looked at Grace, rocking slowly in her chair, her hands protecting the baby who was about to be born. And he understood something he had never understood before. He was changing too. For 5 years, he had been Rowan, the successful businessman who lived in a mansion with a daughter who didn't speak. Now he was Rowan, the father who knew how to play on the floor, who cancelled meetings to build block cities, who danced in the kitchen. He was Rowan, who was part of a real family. "Emily," he called. "Hi, Daddy. Do you want to make dinner together tonight? Can I help cook for real?" "You can. You're the best chef I know." Emily ran inside the house, shouting that she was going to wash her hands. Rowan and Grace were left alone on the porch. The sun had set completely, and the first stars were beginning to appear. "Thank you," Rowan said. "For what?" "For teaching me how to be a real father." Grace smiled. "You were always her father, Rowan. You just needed to figure out how." They went inside together. Emily was already in the kitchen, dragging a chair to reach the sink. Rowan looked around. The kitchen was the same as it had always been, modern, equipped, spotless. But now it seemed different. It looked like a place where a family lived. And for the first time in 5 years, Rowan knew exactly who he was. He was Emily's father. He was part of the family they had built together, and that was more than enough. It was 3 in the morning when Rowan woke up to a knock on his bedroom door. "Rowan?" Grace's voice was low but urgent. "Rowan, I think it's time." He jumped out of bed and ran to open the door. Grace was standing in the hallway, holding her belly with one hand and leaning against the wall with the other. She was pale, breathing deeply. The contractions. They started an hour ago. They're getting stronger. Grace winced as another contraction hit. "I don't think the baby wants to wait any longer." Rowan felt his heart race. He wasn't ready. No one was ready. "Okay, let's go to the hospital now. What about Emily?" "She's coming with us. I'm not leaving you two alone." Rowan ran to Emily's room. She was sleeping soundly, hugging the doll now named Grace. "Emily, princess, wake up." She opened her eyes slowly, confused. "Daddy, it's dark. I know. But we have to take Grace to the hospital. The baby wants to be born." Emily sat up in bed, instantly alert. "The baby is coming today. It looks like it." Emily jumped out of bed and ran into the hallway. Grace was breathing deeply, leaning against the wall. "Grace, are you okay?" "I am, sweetie. Just a little nervous." Emily took Grace's hand. "I'm coming too." Rowan threw on the first clothes he could find and helped Grace down the stairs. Emily ran to get her doll and a book. "To read to the baby," she explained. In the car, Grace settled in the back seat with Emily. Rowan drove as fast as he could without being dangerous. The hospital was 20 minutes from the house, but it seemed very far away at that moment. "How are you feeling?" Emily asked Grace. "A little scared," Grace admitted, "but happy too." "Why scared?" Grace took a deep breath as another contraction came. "Because being a mom is a very important thing, and I want to do everything right." Emily thought for a moment. "You already do everything right with me." Rowan glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Grace smiling, despite the pain. At the hospital, things happened quickly. Grace was taken to a delivery room, and Rowan and Emily stayed in the waiting room. Emily was restless, pacing back and forth. "Does it take a long time for a baby to be born?" she asked. "Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Every baby is different." "Will the baby like me?" Rowan crouched down to her level. "He's going to love you, just like everyone who knows you." Emily smiled and sat next to him. She took the book she had brought and started reading quietly, as if practicing for the baby. 2 hours passed. A doctor appeared and said everything was fine, but it would still be a little while. Emily eventually fell asleep in her chair, her head on Rowan's shoulder. He watched his daughter sleep, thinking about how much life had changed in just a few weeks. 3 months ago, he was a single man raising a daughter who didn't speak. Now he was in a hospital waiting room, waiting for the birth of a child to a woman who had become part of his family. How had it happened so fast? It was almost noon when the doctor appeared again, this time smiling. "The baby is here. It's a boy. Mother and son are doing well." Rowan woke Emily up gently. "He's here, Princess." Emily's eyes shot open. "Can I see him?" "Let's see if you can." The doctor led them to the room where Grace was. She was lying in bed, tired but radiant, holding a small bundle in her arms. Emily ran to the bed. "Where is he?" Grace turned the bundle for Emily to see. A tiny red face appeared, with closed eyes and minuscule fists. "Wow," Emily whispered. "He's tiny, but he's strong," Grace said. "He cried very loudly when he was born." Emily looked at the baby with fascination. "Can I touch him?" "You can. Just be gentle." Emily reached out her finger and touched the baby's little hand. The tiny fingers closed around hers. "He grabbed me." "He likes you," Grace said. Emily stared at the baby for a long moment. Then she looked at Grace, then at Rowan, then back at the baby. "Brother," she said, quietly but clearly. The word filled the room with silence. Rowan felt something tighten in his chest. Emily kept looking at the baby, gently touching his little hand. Then she turned to Grace. Her blue eyes were serious, filled with a wisdom that seemed beyond a 5-year-old. And then, with all the calmness and truth in the world, she said, "Mommy." The silence that followed was complete. Grace sat very still, her eyes welling with tears. Rowan felt his throat tighten and had to fight not to cry right there. Emily had called Grace Mommy, not out of confusion, not by accident, but with the certainty of a child who knew exactly what she was saying. "Emily," Grace said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're my mommy now," Emily said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "And he's my brother, and we're a family." Grace couldn't speak. She just nodded, crying. Rowan approached the bed. He touched Emily's shoulder, then looked at Grace. "Family," he said, simply. The baby opened his eyes at that moment, as if he had been listening to the conversation. He looked at each of them, blinking slowly. "Hi, little one," Emily said. "I'm your sister, and this is our mommy and this is our daddy." Rowan swallowed hard. Daddy. To Emily, he had always been daddy. But now, somehow, he was a daddy of 2. A few hours later, they were all in the car heading home. Grace in the back seat with the baby in her lap, Emily beside her, Rowan driving. No one said much. Emily had asked the baby's name, and Grace said she was still thinking. Emily suggested a few names, and Grace promised to consider them all. But for the most part, they drove in silence. It was a different kind of silence than what Rowan knew. It wasn't the empty silence from before. It was a full silence, heavy with meaning. The 4 of them were together. Emily had a brother. Grace had a son. Rowan had a family. And they all knew that something had changed forever. It wasn't just the baby who had been born that day. An entire family had been born too. Rowan looked in the rearview mirror. Emily was touching the baby's foot and whispering something to him. Grace watched the 2 of them with a tired but happy smile. When they got home, the mansion seemed different. It was no longer the silent house where Rowan and Emily lived alone. It was the home of a family of 4. Rowan carried the hospital things. Grace walked in slowly, holding the baby. Emily ran ahead, announcing to the empty house, "We're home. We brought my brother." In the living room, Grace sat on the sofa, and Emily settled next to her. "Can I hold him?" "You can. But you have to be very careful." Emily held the baby with all the gentleness in the world, as if he were made of glass. "Hi, little brother," she said. "Welcome to our home." Rowan sat in the armchair across from them, watching, Grace tired but happy, Emily being the perfect older sister, the baby sleeping peacefully in his sister's arms, his family, not the family he had planned, not the family he had imagined, but the family that fate had given him, and it was perfect, exactly as it should be. 2 weeks after the baby's birth, the house had found a new rhythm. The baby's cries in the middle of the night, the feedings, the diapers, all of it had become a natural part of the routine. Rowan was in his home office when he heard laughter coming from the garden. Through the window, he saw Emily playing on the grass with her doll, pretending to give it a bath in a small basin. Grace was sitting in a garden chair, nursing the baby, who had finally been given a name, David. Emily had suggested it, and Grace thought it was perfect. Rowan closed his laptop and went down to the garden. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and for the first time in weeks, there was no urgent work waiting for him. "Daddy!" Emily waved when she saw him. "I'm giving baby Grace a bath." The doll had kept the name, even after the real Grace had become Mommy. "Is she enjoying it?" "She is. But she's a crybaby just like David." Grace laughed, adjusting David in her lap. "All babies cry, Emily. It's their way of talking to us." Emily stopped playing and looked at Grace with curiosity. "When I was a baby, did I cry a lot?" Rowan came closer, feeling the familiar weight of that innocent question. "Not as much as other babies. You were always quiet, but now I talk a lot." "Yes, you do," Grace agreed, "and it's so good to hear your voice." Emily smiled and went back to playing with her doll. Rowan sat in a chair next to Grace, watching the domestic scene. It was surreal how natural it felt, as if it had always been this way. "How is he?" he asked, looking at David. "Good. He slept almost through the night yesterday. I think he's getting used to the house." "And you?" Grace looked at him, noticing something different in the tone of his question. "What do you mean?" "Are you getting used to it? Feeling at home?" Grace took a moment to answer, looking around at the well-kept garden, then at Emily playing peacefully, then at David sleeping in her arms. "Sometimes it still feels a bit surreal. A month ago, I was sleeping in the park. Now I'm in a mansion taking care of 2 children being called Mommy." "Emily didn't call you Mommy out of politeness," Rowan said. She truly loves you. I know, and I love her too, more than I ever imagined possible for someone I've known for such a short time." Grace stroked David's hair. "And this little one here, it's like my heart grew to fit more love." David finished feeding, and Grace put him on her shoulder to burp. Emily came running over, always eager to help. "Can I help?" "You can. Pat his back gently." Emily gently patted her brother's back until he let out a loud burp. "It worked!" Emily shouted proudly. "I'm a baby burp expert." "You're a good helper," Grace said. Emily ran back to her doll, continuing her game, but singing now. An invented song about families and babies taking baths. Rowan watched Grace adjust David in her arms. There was something about her that was different now. A calmness, a security that wasn't there before. She seemed complete. "Grace," he said, after a few minutes of contemplative silence. "Yes." Rowan looked at Emily, who was humming the invented song to her doll. Then he looked at David, sleeping peacefully in Grace's lap. He thought about the past few weeks, about how everything had changed, how they had become a unit. "You came here to take care of my daughter." Grace nodded, waiting, sensing something different in Rowan's tone. "But you did so much more than that. You made her heart blossom, and mine too." Grace was quiet, realizing that Rowan was trying to say something important. Rowan paused, choosing his words carefully. He had thought about this moment for days, but now that it was here, he felt his heart race. "I don't want you to feel like an outsider." "Rowan, let me finish." He turned to look directly at her. "We want you with us. Can we try to be a family?" The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Grace looked at David, then at Emily playing, then back at Rowan. Her eyes filled with tears. "A real family?" she asked softly. "A real one, not as an employee, not as a nanny, as my partner, as Emily and David's mother, as family." Grace looked down at her hands, then back at Rowan. "I've never been chosen before." Her voice was thick, heavy with a lifetime of abandonment. For a job, yes. To help with something, yes. But no one has ever chosen me to be part of a family. Rowan reached out and touched her hand. I'm choosing now. Emily already chose a long time ago. And David will grow up thinking it was always this way. Grace looked at his hand on hers, feeling the warmth, the solidity, the promise. But now, I want to. I really do. Rowan smiled, feeling a huge sense of relief. Are you sure? I am. You three are the best thing that's ever happened to me. At that moment, Emily came running towards them, laughing, with the wet doll in her arms. Family, she shouted, throwing herself between the two of them. Grace and Rowan laughed. Emily had said the perfect word at the perfect moment. Family, Rowan agreed, hugging Emily. Family, Grace repeated, with David sleeping in her arms. In the weeks that followed, life in the house found a completely new rhythm. It was no longer the silent routine of before, nor the temporary routine of the first few days with Grace. It was the routine of a real family. Emily transformed into a completely different child. She talked all the time, asked questions, gave opinions, told stories. It was as if 5 years of pent-up words had finally found an escape. Daddy, come with me, she would say every morning, pulling Rowan into some new game she had invented. Today we're going to be explorers, she announced one morning. The backyard is a mysterious forest, and we need to find treasures. What kind of treasures? Rowan would ask, joining the game with genuine enthusiasm. Pretty rocks, special leaves, flowers for Mommy. Mommy, the baby's asleep, she would announce when David finally drifted off after a crying spell. I got him to stop crying by singing that song you taught me, she'd say proudly. You're a wonderful sister, Grace would always reply. I like us like this, she said one afternoon, when they were all in the living room, Grace reading a book, Rowan playing on the floor with David, and she was drawing. Rowan stopped playing and looked at his daughter. Like what, princess? Like this, together, doing normal things, like the families on TV. Grace looked up from her book. You like it when we're all together? I like it a lot. It used to be very quiet here. Now there's good noise. Good noise? Rowan asked. Talking, laughing, David crying, Mommy singing, you laughing at my jokes. Emily listed them as if they were precious treasures. Family noise. Rowan and Grace exchanged glances. Emily was right. The house was full of good noise. The mornings began with David waking up to feed. Grace would get up, but Rowan always went with her, making coffee while she fed the baby. Emily would appear in her pajamas, still sleepy, and climb into Rowan's lap to listen to the quiet morning conversations. Good morning, family, she would say every day, like a sacred ritual. Good morning, our little commander, Rowan would reply. Good morning, my love, Grace would say. After breakfast, Rowan would take Emily to school. She always said goodbye to Grace and David with kisses and waves from the car window. Bye, Mommy, bye, little brother. I'll be back soon. Take care of each other. At school, Emily had become a chatty child. The teacher commented to Rowan that it was as if Emily had discovered the magic of words. She tells elaborate stories about her family, the teacher said. She always mentions her baby brother and the mommy who takes care of everyone. When she came home from school, Emily would run to find Grace and David. She always had news to share. Mommy, today I told the teacher I have a baby brother. And what did she say? That I'm a very lucky sister. And I said I have the best mommy in the world too. Grace was always moved by these spontaneous declarations from Emily. You're the best daughter in the world too, she would always reply. The afternoons were full of activities. Emily helped with David, holding his bottle when he was formula fed, singing to him when he was fussy, making elaborate faces to make him smile. He smiled for real today, Emily announced one afternoon. It wasn't gas, it was a real smile for me. How do you know? Rowan asked. Because he looked right at me and moved his mouth like this. Emily mimicked a small smile, just like you do when you're really happy. Rowan helped with David in ways he had never helped with Emily when she was a baby. He gave him baths, changed his diapers, rocked him to sleep. You're becoming an expert at this, Grace said one evening, watching Rowan bathe David with complete naturalness. It's different this time. How so? With Emily, I was afraid of doing something wrong. I thought I would break her. Rowan lifted David out of the little tub and wrapped him in a soft towel. By now I know that babies are tougher than they look, and you have more confidence in yourself. I have a whole family to help me this time. Emily always wanted to help with David's bath time. Can I wash his little foot? She would ask. You can, but very gently. Does he like warm water like I did? He does, Rowan would answer. Look how relaxed he is. Daddy, you're good at taking care of babies, Emily would say, proud of her father. Grace read stories to Emily every night. They would sit on the bed, Emily in her pajamas, Grace beside her, and read books that Emily chose. Sometimes Rowan would join them, and sometimes David would be asleep in the crib nearby. Mommy, Emily said one night, in the middle of a story about a princess and a dragon. Yes? Are you going to stay with us forever? Grace stopped reading, touched by the vulnerability in Emily's voice. Do you want me to stay? I do. Very, 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 very much. Then I'll stay. Promise? I promise. Emily smiled and snuggled closer to Grace. Now you can continue the story. I want to know if the princess will be able to make the dragon her friend. On weekends, they did simple things together. Picnics in the garden, walks in the park where it all began, afternoons watching movies in the living room. Emily always positioned herself between Rowan and Grace on the sofa, with David sleeping in one of their laps. "So we're a sandwich family," she said one afternoon. "What do you mean?" Grace asked. "I'm the yummy filling, you're the warm bread, and David is the cherry on top." Rowan and Grace laughed. "A sandwich family is perfect," Grace agreed. "And we're the yummiest sandwich in the world," Emily added. One evening, when David was sleeping and Emily was taking a bath, Rowan found Grace on the porch looking at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how fast life changes. 3 months ago, I had nothing. Now I have everything." Rowan sat next to her. "We're the ones who have everything. You gave us a real family. We gave ourselves a family." All together, Emily appeared at the porch door in her pajamas, hair damp, smelling of baby shampoo. "What are you guys doing?" "Just talking," Grace said. "Can I talk too? I have important things to say." "Of course." Emily settled between the two of them, warm and fragrant. "What were you talking about?" "About how lucky we are to be a family," Rowan said. Emily looked up at the stars, thoughtful. "I think Mommy Sarah is watching us." Rowan felt his heart ache. "Why do you think that?" "Because she sent Grace to us. That's what mums do. They take care of their family even when they're not here." Grace took Emily's hand. I'm sure she's proud of you and of us." "I think so too," Emily said. "And she knows you take good care of me and Daddy, and that Daddy learned to be an even better dad." The three of them sat in silence, watching the stars twinkle in the dark sky. They were a family now, not perfect, but real, full of love, good noise, and the certainty that no matter what happened, they would always have each other. And that was more than enough. It was everything. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the breakfast table. It was an ordinary, quiet Sunday, like many others since they had become a real family. Rowan came downstairs to the familiar sounds that now filled the house. Emily talking to David, Grace humming softly. Sounds that just a few months ago he never would have imagined hearing in that mansion. "Good morning, family," Emily said when she saw Rowan enter the kitchen. It was her standard greeting, one that never failed to make Rowan smile. "Good morning, Princess. How's the little brother?" Emily was sitting next to David, who was in his baby seat. She was holding a small spoon and trying to feed him some mush. "He's eating well today. Yesterday he spit everything out." "Babies do that," Grace said, arriving with a basket of fresh bread. The table was simple, ordinary plates, warm bread, fresh fruit, homemade jam that Grace had learned to make. There were no expensive dishes or formalities. Rowan poured coffee for Grace, as he did every morning. It was a small ritual that meant a lot to them. "Thank you," Grace said, smiling. They exchanged a peaceful glance. It wasn't dramatic passion, but something deeper, the certainty that they were in the right place, with the right people. Emily took a piece of bread and started chewing, watching her parents. "Daddy, are you going to work today?" "Nope. It's Sunday, family day." "Good. Can we go to the park?" "Of course." David started to fuss, and Grace got up to pick him up. "Someone wants Mommy's cuddles," she said, lifting David from his seat. Emily watched Grace rock her brother. "Mommy, you're good at that." "At what?" "At being a mommy. You make it look easy." Grace smiled, touched. "It's not always easy. But it's always good." Rowan watched the scene. Grace holding David, Emily talking naturally. It was ordinary, but to him, it was extraordinary. He thought back to a morning a few months ago, when Emily ate her breakfast in silence while he checked emails. The table was the same, but everything had changed. Emily finished eating and came back, positioning herself between Rowan and Grace. "Can I say something?" she asked. "Of course," they both said at the same time. Emily looked at both of them, serious. "Are we a happy family?" The question came out simply, but it was loaded with meaning. Rowan felt his chest tighten with emotion. He looked at Grace, who smiled. She reached out her free hand and held his. "We're trying, and it's working." Emily thought about the answer, then smiled. "Yeah, it really is working." The three of them laughed together. David, as if understanding the happy occasion, stopped fussing and looked at his family. "Even David agrees," Emily said. "Should we get ready to go to the park?" Grace suggested. "Yes, I want to bring the new ball." Emily ran upstairs. Rowan stayed with Grace and David. "She asked an important question," Grace said. "She did, and you heard my answer." "I liked the honesty." Rowan moved closer to her. "We are not perfect. We're still learning, but we're a real family," Grace said. "We are." They got their things ready for the outing, diapers for David, toys for Emily, a blanket, simple things for an ordinary family. They left together. Rowan carried David, Grace the bag. Emily ran ahead with the ball. "I'm going to show David where we met," Emily said. Rowan looked back at the mansion. The house was the same, but it had changed completely. Before it was silent, cold, empty. Now it was noisy, warmed by love, full of real life. In the car, Emily chatted about the park. Grace answered her questions. David slept peacefully. Rowan drove without rushing. He was no longer the stressed executive who ran around trying to fill voids with work. He was a father, a husband, part of a family. They arrived at the park where it had all begun, where Emily had spoken for the first time, where Grace had appeared like an angel in disguise. Emily ran to the bench where Grace had been sitting that first day. "It was here," she announced. "This is where Mommy taught me how to talk." Rowan sat on the bench with David. Grace sat next to him. "Do you remember what you thought that day?" Grace asked. "I thought you were a stranger who had coincidentally made my daughter speak. And now? Now I know you came to complete our family." Emily came running back. "Daddy, will you play with me?" "Of course." Rowan handed David to Grace and went to play ball with Emily. She laughed every time he missed the target. "You're not good at soccer, Daddy." "I'm not, but I'm a good dad." "That's true. You're the best dad in the world." Grace watched the two of them. David woke up, and she placed him on the blanket, letting him feel the grass. Rowan came back sweaty from playing. "I'm tired," he said, laughing. "You're getting old," Grace joked. "I'm getting happy," he corrected. Emily came over, tired too. "Can I hold David?" "You can, but sit here first." Emily sat down, and Grace placed David in her lap. The baby smiled at his sister. "Look, he smiled at me." "He loves his sister," Grace said. I love him too. And I love you guys, Emily said, naturally. We love you too, Rowan replied. There, sitting on the blanket, the four of them formed a complete family. Not perfect, not without problems, but real. The mansion waited for them at home, no longer silent, but filled with the sounds of those who truly live. Laughter, conversations, even tears and small arguments. Everything that is part of a real home. A home that was born from silence, but that blossomed in love. And it was more than enough, it was everything.